you've just finished the clip. A few careful snips, feathers falling onto the newspaper below, and you set your budgie back on its perch, pretty satisfied with yourself. Safer now, you tell yourself. No more close calls near the ceiling fan. No more panicked dashes toward an open window. You wash your hands, put the scissors away, and go about the rest of your afternoon, genuinely believing the hard part is over. The bird sits there, still, looking calm exactly the way you'd hoped. But honestly, here's what's happening in that stillness, right underneath the surface. The moment those feet lose the ability to vault into open air, something inside that small body shifts completely. Not gratitude, not relief. An invisible wave of disorientation, rewriting the entire relationship your bird has with the room and with you in real time. You think you just made things safer, but flip this around for a second, because from where your budgie is sitting, something very different just happened. Think about this. Every single ounce of a budgie's biology was built around one single defense mechanism: explosive, instantaneous flight. Millions of years of evolution, refined for one single purpose. The moment danger appears, you launch, and you are gone before the threat can close the distance. That instinct doesn't know what a ceiling fan is. It doesn't understand a wing clip is meant to help. All it knows is that the one tool it has always trusted, the one option that always existed no matter what, has suddenly, silently disappeared. And this is where it gets interesting. To a creature wired that way, the giant shape walking across the room, the one that feeds it, talks to it, means well by every human measure, doesn't stop registering as a potential threat just because you're familiar. You were always tolerated, partly because escape was always an option. Take that escape away and the room doesn't feel safer. It kind of feels like a trap, with a very large, very unpredictable animal wandering through it. Every sudden movement you make, every quick reach toward the cage, now lands with a weight it never carried before. And this is the part people miss, because the stillness you're seeing on that perch, it isn't calm at all. Your bird isn't just sitting there quietly because it's relaxed. Its brain is actually running constant spatial calculations, checking the distance to the curtain rod, gauging the curve it would normally take to reach the top of the bookshelf, running through the same escape routes it's always used. Except now, every single one of those calculations hits a wall. The rod is still there, the bookshelf hasn't moved, but the physical ability to actually reach either one of them is just gone. And their brain keeps hitting that gap over and over again, like reaching for a step in the dark that isn't there anymore. Just try to imagine for a second what that must feel like from the inside. A path your body has taken 1,000 times suddenly refusing to exist, no matter how many times your instinct insists it should still be there. You can't explain the sudden absence of lift to a mind that has never needed an explanation before. It simply tries, fails, and tries again, trying to figure it out in silence. Gravity, which used to be just background noise to them, has suddenly become the single most dominant force in their entire world. But here's the part nobody actually tells you when they hand you those wing clipping instructions. Once a budgie can no longer fly to safety, it stops treating you the way it used to. Before the clip, you were mostly just a neutral part of their environment. You were around, sometimes close, but never truly terrifying, because they knew they could always just leave. But after the clip, every single footstep you take gets graded differently. A casual step across the living room, one you wouldn't think twice about, suddenly looks like a massive, seismic event. Something huge, moving unpredictably, in a space where running away is no longer an option. Picture the shift from your bird's side of things. Before, your approach was just one of 100 small events in its day, easily ignored because it could always just fly away if it wanted to. But now, that same approach carries an unspoken question every single time. Is this the moment escape actually matters? And if it is, what happens now that escape isn't an option anymore? That question runs quietly under every interaction, whether you ever notice it or not. What this means for you is simple, and honestly, a little uncomfortable. Your ordinary movements now carry a completely different weight. The shoe you kick off near the couch, the chair you push back from the table. All of it lands differently on a nervous system that no longer has an exit strategy. Here's what most people don't realize. Think about what happens next, because it changes how you should read one of the most common moments in budgie ownership. When you reach into the cage after a clip and your bird steps onto your finger without hesitation, it's easy to assume that's affection. Trust finally blooming the way you hoped it would. But here's the part people miss. Without the ability to bolt, refusing your finger isn't really an option anymore. What looks like willing cooperation is often something closer to surrender. Compliance shaped by helplessness, not desire. It can look exactly like tameness to an untrained eye. And that's precisely what makes it so easy to misread. Consider the difference. A bird that steps up because it genuinely chooses to, having tested and confirmed your hand, is safe over dozens of free interactions, versus one that steps up simply because there was never really another option on the table. From across the room, both look identical. Up close, over time, they'd build two entirely different kinds of relationships. That doesn't mean the relationship is fake. It just means the foundation underneath it changed the day the clip happened. And most owners never even notice the difference. Now, here's the deeper layer. The one that reveals just how adaptable and quietly resourceful these small animals actually are. Grounded. Your budgie doesn't just sit and wait. It rebuilds its entire internal map of the room from scratch. Not by height and flight paths anymore, but by floor-level hideouts. The gap beneath the couch. The shadow behind a chair leg. The exact distance your shoes tend to stop before they'd ever reach the corner it favors. The sky used to be the map, now the floor is, and it learns that new map with the same precision it once used to judge a landing on your shoulder from across the room. Watch closely over the next few weeks, and you'll start to see it. A preference for the underside of a particular chair, a habit of freezing near the coffee table leg instead of staying out in the open, a growing awareness of exactly how close your feet get before you even realize it's there. None of that is just basic instinct anymore, you know? It's learned, refined, adjusted daily. That same intelligence that used to read wind currents, now it's reading your furniture instead. That's not simple animal behavior. Honestly, that's a real-time adaptation. An intelligence quietly reorganizing itself around the total loss of its original survival tool, and you didn't even see the process happen. So think about what this actually means for your relationship. Because it's bigger than just a grooming choice. You didn't really protect your bird from the room. You turned the entire room into a cage, and you made yourself its sole gatekeeper, the only one who decides when it gets picked up, moved somewhere safer, or left exposed. Every bit of safety it has now runs entirely through your hands, your timing, your awareness of where danger might be. This matters. That's not a small responsibility. That's the whole of its world, just resting on whether you happen to be paying attention. Which brings it back to that exact moment. That first quiet stillness on the perch right after the clip, the one you once read as calm. Now, you know what was actually happening underneath it. A small, brilliant mind was recalculating everything it thought it understood about safety, about distance, about you. Not out of fear alone, but out of the same intelligence that lets it survive an entirely new set of rules, imposed the second those feathers hit the newspaper. None of this means the clip was wrong, or that keeping a bird safe from a fan blade isn't worth the trade-off. It just means the trade-off is real, and it's bigger than most people ever stop to consider. Understanding what your bird is actually experiencing underneath that calm exterior, that's the difference between a relationship built on genuine trust and one quietly built on the absence of any other choice. So here's a question worth sitting with. Do you remember the exact moment your own budgie first tried to fly after a clip and just dropped instead of soaring? What did their body language do right after? Did they freeze? Did they scramble for the nearest cover? Or did something about them change in a way you couldn't quite name at the time? Tell me in the comments. I'd genuinely like to hear what you noticed and whether you saw it differently back then than you do now.